But your open experience.
Yeah, I wish it didn't have a history. If we just thought of it as a thing, like a Wolverine, right? Wolverines don't have any. There's no one feels about a Wolverine the same way they think about a bear, because there's no like cute Wolverines.
Mm-hmm.
There's only the ones that you see in like X-Men, like the
Right.
Wolverine dude.
It's just one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's like a person. His name's Wolverine. There's no like cute Wolverines because they're so fucking ferocious.
Mm-hmm.
Such a monster of a little animal. One Wolverine will fuck up a big bear.
Oh, for real?
Dude, they're fucking ruthless. They chase wolves off food.
How big are Wolverines?
Not big, man. 40 pounds, 50 pounds.
Jeez.
They'll fuck up everything. They fuck up everything.
Damn.
Everything runs away from them. They're just ready to die. All day. All day ready to die. And they're super strong and durable for a little tiny thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a Wolverine looks like?
And now I think I don't.
Pull up a Wolverine bearing his fangs. It looks like a fake animal. It looks like a super jacked little giant rat bear thing with fangs. It's like a super. It's like a super badger.
Right.
Badgers are.
And badgers are vicious. I know they're vicious.
Fucking vicious. That's a Wolverine.
Jeez.
Bro. I mean, look at the teeth on that thing. Look at its face.
And it's smiling.
Yeah.
That's a good day.
Those motherfuckers are ready to go to war all day. Make weird noises. They're terrifying. Like, if that thing wanted to kill you, you would be fucked. Look at
Those
the
claws
and the teeth. Now imagine that thing is hyper aggressive and it's a predator. Fuck!
That shit is built to survive.
Fuck, man. That is a crazy little animal. They are ferocious and they are ready to go at all times. And they'll try to get the fuck away from you. The animal scientific name means the glutton.
Damn.
And it's a pretty apt description. 4 feet tall, weighing 22 pounds for females and 40 pounds for males. These fierce creatures are the largest members of the weasel family. They're fucking weasels, bro.
A vicious weasel.
Still, they're small compared to some of the animals that they compete with for food. But a Wolverine has no problem standing up to wolves or a bear when a meal is on the line. Isn't that crazy? 40 pounds. The way bears are to us is the way, or we are to dogs. You know, like an 80-pound dog would probably fuck you up if you're a 150-pound person. That's how Wolverines are to bears.
Damn.
A 40-pound Wolverine might fuck up a 200-pound bear.
Damn.
And the bear's like, damn, this ain't worth it.
When I die, I want to come back as a Wolverine.
Yeah.
Inspire a million ways for hunters to innovate. One of those ways is to stop hunting altogether and start scavenging. The Wolverine's nose leads the way, sniffing out prey and hibernating animals buried more than 20 feet beneath the snow. This dog-sized weasel is able to take down a full-grown caribou. But today, this Wolverine is saving his energy. He's found a frozen dinner. It takes the keenest nose to pick up the scent of a carcass in winter. Wolverines outmatch most other animals with this skill. But then, they have to contend with each other. Within minutes, the competition arrives. This is when the true Wolverine nature kicks into the max. The same practical claws come out. The specialized teeth are bared. It's all out war. The defender gets the upper claw and wins his meal back. Powerful jaws break down the entire animal, including hooves, teeth, and bones. This is his turf. His was supposed to be convenient.
Oh my god, this is laggy as fuck.
Enter the Wolverine. It's 1/3 the size of a wolf. Surviving on the fringes of the food chain. His bear-cat, unsurpassed for its strength and endurance, is a savage hunter and a ferocious fighter. Is no match for the tenacious Wolverine. Bloody and exhausted, the wolf, now alone, goes to find the pack and leaves the prize to the hungry Wolverine. Food is not the only reason for showdowns in the animal. We're now in Pennsylvania. All summer, the white-tailed deer live in
Isn't it nice when you can keep things simple? Well,
seem to break the rules. Hi there, Bubble here, and today I'll show you 12 fearless animals. Let's go. We can see a middle-sized rhino staring at its potential enemy. Having seen something unusual, he bravely attacks the white SUV. If the rhinoceros was bigger, the white SUV's driver would have been in a lot of problems. Unfortunately, the video snaps at this moment, but we surely see that the rhino is staring at its next potential victim. This cute cat might receive different nicknames: Ready, Curious, Beauty, but to my mind, he feels kamikaze deep in his heart. I would be extremely happy to have such a pet to show me the way. As for me, it's too dangerous. To tell the truth, I've never seen such a cute feline. Having lit the wick, the adults stepped aside to a safe distance to enjoy the firework. But this pooch reacted differently. We're not sure whether he might see the potential opponent or something attracted him enormously, but the dog bravely protected his owners from the sparkles. This footage shows us a hippo attacking a pickup truck. When the animal saw a strange object, it attacked immediately without any hesitation. If you were the driver, you would surely be scared to death.
Shit! 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 Shit!
And the hippo wasn't the coward and had definitely won this duel, having damaged the car badly. And
let's go ahead and move to calls unless you have any comments.
No, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. We will take, how about Jacob? Jacob from Missouri. You are on with Dawn and Jenna.
Hi, Jacob.
Hey, how's it going?
Great, how are you?
I'm just making sure you guys can hear me clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're a young earth creationist, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Now, I let your guy know that I'm actually, it was kind of funny because, and I didn't call you guys looking for a debate. I was actually of your guys' perspective on a matter.
Okay.
I originally wished to talk to Matt, but I honestly think that you guys probably know him well enough, and you guys are probably scripturally sound enough. At least you've studied enough to know I'm asking. You know, you guys usually side with Matt pretty well solid.
Well, you know, we don't worship Matt. We love Matt, but
doctrinal accuracy. So here, let me just lay out where I'm going, and let you guys kind of roll with it from there. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
That's fine, but maybe before we get there, you should know that atheists don't put a whole lot of stock in the Bible. So you know,
I'm not saying
the minutia of the Bible. You know, maybe something that Jenna is interested in, but it's not something that's my strong suit. But go ahead.
It's not mine either.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. What I'm actually after is, because you guys have a direct opposition of my position, I'm actually leaning on that perspective because your guys' unbiased opinion leads to some more accuracy when it comes to doctrine. You understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, whenever they have a tendency to be biased and more forgiving towards what the doctrines say, so they'll convolute it with untruth or something because it's the feel warm good people. I believe that you guys really honestly care. So I'm looking for your position in this matter.
Okay. Well, we try to believe true things.
Yeah. And the reason I actually listened to a previous episode, and you guys had another lady on there, and she debated what I would call a theistic or a progressive evolutionist. Basically, you know what that means. I don't think I need to explain it. Somebody who believes that God started the first particle and it evolved and progressed and things like that.
And God's power steering evolution, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
So what I'm creating now is a spectrum. I'm at the young earth, and you guys know what all that entails. I don't need to explain it. And you guys are atheists, So you're on the opposite side of this spectrum. Do you agree with
I
me?
would say so, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
So what do we think of this middle ground, or is that where you're
Yeah,
going?
so what I'm actually looking at is how you feel about this middle ground. Do you feel theistic evolution is undoctrinally backed and it's actually derived from exterior sources from the Bible?
Really relevant what I feel.
Well, do you guys agree? I would, if we're going to go with direct, sure. Do you think, or whatever you have studied, from my perspective, I would say that the doctrine of the Bible does not teach theistic evolution. It does not. Now, I'm not. This is not me asking you. Do you agree with the Bible?
Let me ask you. Let me turn it around and ask you a related question, and that is,
sure.
Do you think that God answers prayers?
That's irrelevant to what we're talking about.
Well, I do. I don't think it is, because if God is answering prayers and giving guidance to people and giving things to people that may ask for things, then He is actively involved in the universe and doing things in the universe, right?
Okay, well, we can assume that. After is, do you think, or based on what you read, does the Scripture teach a 6-day creation in literal 6 days, or do you think that it is we're capable of inserting a millennia or eons into the 6-day creation? And what we're reading is not because of atheists, actually, it's because of people like Hugh Ross and things like that, which I think are in the middle ground of our spectrum.
Right, but I don't read
and
Scripture.
This is not me forcing you guys to agree with. I can say, yeah.
Jacob,
the Bible says
Jacob, hold on, real quick. I don't read Scripture. So when you say things like, when you read the Scripture, what do you think? I don't read the Scripture. Can you give me a reason why I should?
I've read Genesis, and yes, it does say 6 days, and there's no equivocation on days, and yes, to have a longer creation time, you have to somehow finagle days into eons. And
thank you so much for that answer. Because you realize how hard it is to get. And it's not that, and I'm not forcing, just because you said yes, the Bible says that. I'm not saying that you agree with what the Bible says. That's not me saying, I'm not going to go parade around now and say, see, they agree with me. No, you are saying that yes, the Bible is. It's kind of hard to insert that amount of time.
So I, put that as one of tens of thousands of problems with the Bible stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'm sorry, Jenna. I'm sorry. I was under the impression the guy I called in, he said you were a former Catholic. So I did make an assumption that you did read. I'm sorry for that. I mean, I was concerned that you know it like through and through. But
well,
that was honestly my only question.
Okay.
Because I deal with a lot of people. I think that Scripture, there is parts that talk about, maybe you'll remember what I'm saying, but he talks about water, hot and cold water, and lukewarm. He rejects lukewarm. I believe, now I'm not saying I'm hot or cold or you guys, but I know that we are opposites of the spectrum. And the theistic people and the progressive are kind of in the middle ground trying to blend both of us together. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so...
Well, there's a lot of bending over backwards to try to make it fit reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, coming from that... So real quick, so having been a Catholic and my limited experience with the Scripture was that I believed that because I had gone to church every single Sunday my whole life, that I had just heard it. So I didn't spend a lot of time on my own reading it because I thought, oh, well, I'm going to hear it in church or in CCD class or somewhere anyway. So, and then when it got to difficult things that, hearing different versions of how the earth was created, I kind of just went with what I felt, right? So I just assumed.
Retaining from osmosis.
Well, I had when I was approached with something that was confusing to me, then I would assign whatever I wanted to it. So I gradually became more of but everybody knows the Bible's just full of metaphors. Nobody could take it seriously, and so it's just I just kind of
And I think Catholicism, more than the Protestant sects, are not real big on interpreting the Bible themselves. They prefer to have the Catholic Church interpret it for them. In fact, I think it was sort of a bit of a mistake in some ways that they allowed the Bible to be printed up and allow common people to read it.
Right.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there. I think that was one of their biggest mistakes, was leading to other people for your understanding. If I went to you and said, hey, what do you think about this? And you told me, and I'm like, well, I guess that must be true.
Right.
That leads to all kinds of problems.
Until you get two different priests saying the exact opposite thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with, and that's one thing, it's like, I would rather talk to an atheist who completely disagrees with me, because at least we have clear definitions.
Cool.
And that's where I'm kind of coming to you guys for clear definition.
Well,
I would ask you this: would you mind if I quoted you on that? Not saying like, oh, you agree with what the Bible says, but you agree that the Bible says it.
I do.
You know what I'm saying?
You may quote me.
Okay, I wish everybody was there. So,
but with the caveat that I'm not a Bible expert, and I did look up days in a concordance to see if there was any wiggle room there.
The age argument.
Yeah, and there was not wiggle room that I could find. But
yeah, no, and that's how and at least if we're looking like at an algorithm, you look at a bunch of numbers, you ultimately are going to get one single answer, and that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, whether you believe the Bible or not, and this is not an assertion that it's true, this is just saying at least its own logical algorithms are consistent with itself.
Are they?
I don't think so.
In the sense of the biblical creation, it says, I created in 6 days, and blah, blah, blah. So therefore, anybody who is going to want to change that are going to have to really work hard to make that not that.
Well, it's my impression that the Genesis is largely a collection of just so stories of, this is why we have to work, this is why life is so hard, this is why women suffer in childbirth, this is why there's day and night.
Like I said, we don't have to, and like I said, I told him I wasn't into a debate, but I agree with you in the sense that those, what I would call them abstract concepts, can be used to clarify the context. You're dealing with abstract concepts, they have to coincide with contradictional laws.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you deal with abstraction, you get a lot of interpretational issues. So that's where a lot of people, instead of using their own mind, they would just, like you said, in Catholicism, go to somebody else and whatever you said, I'll just go with it.
The Bible strikes me as if it were written by an all-powerful being for our understanding, I think he did a crappy job.
Yeah.
It's not very clear, and it invites all sorts of interpretation. It's wisps of stories that you're supposed to sort of fill in the blanks to, and of course people are going to come up with different interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here, let me give you, like I said, I wasn't wanting to call for like a long debate. I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on, does the Bible...
Well, if you want to stop here, we can.
If you want to continue this conversation, maybe I can call another time.
Okay,
that's fine.
Let's do that. Well, I appreciate your call, and I hope that you and the other Christians figure out what it says.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can. Great. How are you guys doing?
Just fine. How are you?
I'm very well. So yeah, I want to talk about the evidence for the resurrection, particularly the evidence pertaining to the post-resurrection appearances experienced by the disciples after Jesus' death. First of all, let's just get a sense of how far along the road you would agree with me on. Would you agree that the apostles made claims after the resurrection or after Jesus' death that Jesus had appeared alive from the dead? Would you agree with that?
There are stories about apostles.
Mm-hmm.
That's about as far as I would go.
If I was black, no. I don't think I've ever heard of
I'm not
that
personally convinced
song.
that the apostles
Or
actually are real.
Tom
so.
McDonald? Nope.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I mean, what would you say about the eyewitness testimony in the Apostle Paul, for example?
Testimonies and stories of this and that.
I mean, you made the claim that you're skeptical that the apostles really existed. I'm just curious how you deal with the eyewitness testimony from the Apostle Paul, because obviously he met the apostles, or so he claims. That's eyewitness testimony, isn't it?
Interesting. So that's kind of like you saying you don't believe that Peter Pan exists, but my goal is to figure out why you think that that Peter Pan used, pixie dust.
So what are the eyewitness sources concerning Peter Pan?
Wendy was an eyewitness, wasn't she?
Yeah, Wendy was.
And is there evidence that Wendy existed?
Not that I found.
Well, there's overwhelming evidence that Paul existed. I mean,
Okay, so what's that evidence?
Well, we have Luke, for the traveling companion of Paul, for example. He was an eyewitness to Paul. We have we have 13 letters of Paul in the New Testament.
Okay, we've got Paul. I believe that Paul existed, and I believe he wrote letters. There's a lot of fabrications in those letters. How do we get from letters and stories to supernatural events?
Okay, I'm just questioning because it was claimed just a few minutes ago that you're skeptical that the apostles exist.
Me personally, yes, and I'm willing to go with you and hypothetically and say if they did exist, then what? But I'm just not hard convinced that they weren't, you know.
Okay, because we have multiple lines of eyewitness testimony concerning the apostles. So I mean, no serious reputable scholar would debate that. I mean,
it's my understanding that the earliest document was Mark, and it was written around 90. And so
actually, we have sources. I mean, that's not even the liberal dating from Mark. I mean, the liberal. I mean, Bartman would probably date Mark in the 70s AD. I would personally date Mark in the 50s. But we have sources that predate Mark's Gospel. 1 Corinthians, for example, was written between 50 and 55 AD. And we have also.
And this is Paul's letters, is that right?
Okay.
Yeah. Some of them are very, very early. 1 Thessalonians is probably the earliest epistle of Paul. And within Paul's letters, we actually have material preserved for us, which goes very, very early indeed. Most famously, of course, being the creedal tradition summarized in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 3 through 7.
So how do we know that Paul wasn't just pulling a fast one on the early Christians and getting free dinner everywhere he went?
Well, Paul was subject to intense persecution. We know that from numerous sources, both from Paul's own testimony and also from eyewitness testimony of others. For example,
so if somebody's persecuted, they're telling the truth. Is that?
Well, it suggests that they're at least sincere in what they're saying. That's what it suggests. That there's nothing obvious that he had to gain from making things up, and he had everything to lose. If you look at the laundry list of his sufferings related to us in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, it's a long list. And we also
so do you think
from Rome and Zach? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, do you think that because he had in this situation, because he had everything to gain and nothing to lose, that means that it's true?
He had everything to lose, nothing to gain. It doesn't mean that it's true, but it means that he was sincere. And so the question was he making things up?
Well, but was it true? That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about necessarily what the story is until I can get past the idea that it's true. You know what I mean?
Right. So we have three. When anyone makes a claim, right, we have three contending hypotheses. We have the hypothesis that they are correct. Mm-hmm. We have the hypothesis that they're honestly mistaken, and we have the hypothesis that they made it up. They lied, right? Okay. And so I'm arguing. So I would argue against the hypothesis that Paul made it up, and I would argue against the hypothesis that he was honestly mistaken. And so then that would be my argument. The point is, the reason I bring up Paul here is because Paul provides us with some testimony that the apostles made claims concerning the resurrection, that the apostles had claimed Jesus had risen from the dead and had appeared to them after his death. And that's in 1 Corinthians 15, where he writes to the Corinthian Christians. He's writing from Ephesus in the early to mid 50s.
So Paul was, promoting these ideas, and I don't know, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that we agree that there were apostles, and there were these stories,
What's your favorite story?
My favorite story?
Sorry if that sounded really insensitive. I didn't mean it that way.
The most significant story is the resurrection in the gospel.
Okay, so that's the one you called about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm willing to go with the idea, let's say the apostles all existed and say they all had eyewitness testimony and they all say that the resurrection happened and you have evidence for that, how do we find that evidence?
Right, so we have evidence that the apostles claimed this from, as I said, because of Paul, from the Gospel and Acts. Okay, so let's grant that for the purpose of argument and move forward.
Sure.
And I think the evidence that the apostles claim that is overwhelming. That is the scholarly consensus across the theological spectrum that the apostles sincerely came to believe Jesus had risen from the dead and has appeared to them. Now, when we look at the claims concerning the nature and variety of resurrection experiences reported by the Gospels, we see that they are multi-sensory or polymodal in character. That is to say, that they involve not just sight, but group sightings, group conversations with Jesus, physical contact with Jesus, eating breakfast with Jesus on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, etc. Moreover,
are you reading this somewhere?
No, I'm not. And moreover, according to Acts 1, it was reported that the resurrection experiences were reported to happen over 40 days. So it was not just one brief and confusing episode.
Okay, so
that's a lot of
so we got a lot of stories, and you know, a lot of half-baked evidence doesn't get you to the truth.
So,
right?
So what is the definition of evidence to you?
Well, I would define evidence in Bayesian terms as evidence for your hypothesis, H if and only if the probability of E is greater given H than given non-H. So, in other words, if you, to take an illustration...
So what is the probability that a human can resurrect?
Let me finish defining and then we can talk about that.
Okay.
So if you imagine a court scene and you have the accused and the forensic scientist presents the murder weapon which has the accused fingerprints on the handle or something like that. That is evidence for the guilt hypothesis because it's more probable or more expected given the hypothesis of guilt over innocence. And so that's how I...
Yeah, so I'm familiar with Bayesian analysis, and you know you have to have initial probabilities for a lot of things if you're going to try to make an argument with that, and you are assuming that gods exist and these sorts of things, and I would give initial probabilities of those as 0 because we have no evidence for gods. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, having no evidence doesn't make the probability 0.
Oh well, then you don't get to make up a number.
How do you get it higher than 0?
Tell me exactly how you'd make up a number of the probability of the existence of God in order to plug into your equation to arrive at, you know, Jesus resurrected.
And so, wait, I need to clarify a misunderstanding on your part regarding prior probability, because to claim or assert that a prior probability is 0 means that you have to demonstrate some logical inconsistency in the proposition.
Well,
we have no evidence for God, right? So that's what I would use.
If the prior probability of something is 0, there's no amount of evidence that can overcome that.
So
then how do we get it above 0?
What probability would you assign for universe creating pixies? Couldn't you construct an argument that involves those and you know, with some non-zero probability come up with all sorts of crazy crap as a result?
Well, for one thing, I haven't seen any evidence for the existence of...
I haven't seen any for God.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
My intuition is the probability of the pixies...
But why are we talking about intuition when we're talking about... You called it saying that you had evidence.
Yeah. So, as I said, we have the apostolic testimony concerning the resurrection.
I could say that my intuition says that it's not real.
Bayesian analysis argument. So,
okay, finish my point. So we have 3 contending hypotheses as to the origins of the apostles' belief that Jesus had risen from the dead and had appeared to them. We have the hypothesis they were telling the truth, or they were honestly mistaken, or they made it up. Right?
Or that
it was a fucking story.
Well, that would come under one of these 2 hypotheses.
No, or they didn't even exist.
Yeah, it could be a meme that just was popular.
I mean, the hypothesis that the apostles didn't exist is on the level of flat earthism among some.
Wait.
Yeah, but you know, we could. There's this movie about Abraham Lincoln being a vampire slayer. Well, Abraham Lincoln existed, but that doesn't mean he killed vampires, right?
Right, but we don't have any eyewitnesses claiming that he was a vampire, do we?
Okay, so if I
We
put
don't have
something
any
out there,
idea. This is for any of these things in the Bible either. We've got stories.
Yes, we do. We have the gospel.
so we have evidence that people believed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so we don't have any evidence that it was actually true.
Right. So what's the best explanation of that? So
I have, I mean, if you look at, hundreds of years ago, we had evidence, and we had enough evidence to make people believe that the world was flat, and then we found out we were wrong. Because we found more evidence, we found better evidence to prove us wrong. So now, hold on, I'm not done. So now we're talking about something that we can't necessarily prove wrong because we don't have an Earth to test and experiment on and show you that it's actually round. So you're like, we're past the is the Earth round or flat argument in the concept of God. We're saying, how do we know that it's there? We can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't test it. Where is it?
Well, it's a forensic analysis because these are events which transpired in the past and we can't repeat them, so we have to look at the clues that have been.
So then why do you think it still exists?
T, right?
Let's say it did exist 2,000 years ago and Jesus was resurrected and there was a God. How do we have any evidence that that God is still here?
Because
I don't know if he's making that claim.
Oh, okay.
God by definition is eternal, and so if God is eternal, then obviously
We decided that gods are eternal.
So it's a kind of a special pleading thing.
Okay.
Well, no, it's a definition to God because God is a necessary being, a being which exists necessarily. But I mean, that's moving off the topic.
Would you agree that 2,000-year-old stories are kind of weak evidence?
No, well, it depends on the nature of those stories and those accounts. But if it wasn't eyewitness,
suppose suppose the story says that 80 billion people believe the story in the story. Does that make it more believable? Does it?
Well, you have to look at the particulars of the case. Let me just make this point, this trilemma point. We have these three contending hypotheses that they were correct, they made it up, or they were honestly mistaken. The fact that
or there were lies about their assertions.
Okay, but we can demonstrate that's false by looking at the accounts in Paul's letters and also in the Gospel of Acts that demonstrate the Gospel of Acts.
So just because a story has some internal consistency doesn't mean it's true, right?
No, I never said that. We have the creedal tradition that Paul passes on 1 Corinthians 15. Notice also that in 1 Corinthians 15, after Paul was done describing the appearances, he goes on to talk about his own experience with the resurrection. In verse 11, he says, "Whether then it was I or they," meaning the apostles he just mentioned, "so we preached and so he believed, and so thus he assumed that the message he then proclaiming concerning the resurrection was the same as that proclaimed previously to the Corinthians by the apostles, in particular Peter, James, and the 12.
Okay.
With independent reason,
I'm not buying any of this. I'm sorry.
We have independent reason to think that the Corinthians were familiar and acquainted with Peter's preaching because he mentions that the divisions and factions in the midst of the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians.
Again, if a story.
No, I've never said that at any point. Well,
okay, so we don't believe the story, and you're telling me it's internally consistent.
We're employing forensic old accounts which are branded in the eyewitness testament or written by eyewitnesses, and determining are these eyewitnesses credible. The fact that the resurrection reports...
They're stories of eyewitnesses.
So when you have an eyewitness, hold on. So when you have an eyewitness, you have a lot of things that you have to work around. You have to work around what that eyewitness is claiming to see. You have to work on whether or not that eyewitness is likely to lie. You have to work on whether that eyewitness is likely to be wrong, which, I mean, that's huge for any person that has ever existed. That it's very likely that a person can be wrong. You have to look at so many things for each individual eyewitness and prove that each thing is reliable. And it's like you're saying that just because they're eyewitnesses that we know that it's true. And it's like, well, we have eyewitnesses for things today that we can write off as completely invalid and illogical.
No, it's not that we know it's true because it's eyewitnesses, although that's part of the evidence for it. But
then what's the better evidence? Better than eyewitness? 2,000 years ago.
You're giving weak evidence for something that is miraculous, and and you need to have strong evidence
Right.
for something that's miraculous.
So Don could tell me right now, I just met Don before the show, and he could tell me that he has a Lexus outside. And I'd say, okay, cool. Do I believe him? Well, sure, why not? But he could say that his Lexus is not only blue, but it flies and it runs off of milk, and you know, that's an outrageous claim, right? So what should I do to figure out whether or not that's true? Well, okay, there's going to be a lot that's going to have to prove to me that that's real.
Yeah, and everybody in the audience agrees.
Right? And so if everybody says, oh, you know what, Don really does drive a car that runs on milk and it flies and all this stuff. It's like, okay, now let's look and see, is this claim 2,000 years old? And how do we really know if Don owned a car that flew on milk and it was 2,000 years ago?
Okay, there's a few things in there to talk about.
Sure.
First thing is that it's not so much it's not so much that the eyewitness. Sorry, it's more the nature of the eyewitness testimony that's important here. So
right, they're stories, right?
Okay, let me finish. Studies have shown that.
So there are really no eyewitnesses because we can't interview any of those people, right? So don't even use that term because it's a lie.
What's a lie?
Eyewitness.
We don't know if they were actually eyewitnesses
that we can talk to and interrogate about this event.
We can't verify that. So what can we verify?
We do have their statements.
So what can we verify?
We have something claimed to be their statements, right?
And we can indicate it by forensic statements analysis. We can look at how they interlock with one another. We look at how they corroborated by external sources.
That's not good enough for me.
If a story is internally consistent, it doesn't make it true, right?
You put the bar to the point that there's no amount of evidence that could ever persuade you.
Maybe.
You know, God could come and fix Christianity's evil history and wipe it all clean and make it better and do that today, and I would believe that there was a God. So no.
By the way, you mentioned the old Carl Sagan slogan that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, giving the example you gave. I completely disagree with that. I think all claims require sufficient evidence. And what you don't need a single extraordinary piece of evidence to establish a claim. You can have that.
I do for this one.
Lots of weak pieces of evidence, which cumulatively.
No, for extraordinary claims, you need extraordinary evidence.
So you're making the claim that you can hook together a bunch of weak, half-baked things that may or may not be true and arrive at the truth.
And then saying, if you don't accept this, then you'll never accept anything.
I mean, if you have a sequence of facts that are individually true, they can add up to something, right? That's how we infer the age of the universe, for example, and the age of the Earth. Is we look at a lot of different evidence, but those are not half-baked things. Those are not stories.
They're verified.
They're verified.
Over and over and over again by different people in different ways. They're checked and double-checked because they're extraordinary claims, so we had to come up with extraordinary evidence. So what's your extraordinary evidence that Jesus not only existed, but he resurrected? He came back from the dead.
I'm sorry, but this is straightforward mathematics.
This is mathematics?
Because you multiply the relative strength, you multiply the evidence together, and so weak pieces of evidence, if you have enough of them, equates to strong evidence, which you don't do.
Okay, you've made a lot of logical mistakes here. You've made a bunch of false dichotomies or false trichotomies where you haven't considered all the possibilities, right? You claim that the evidence for God is non-zero, which is basically a non-zero. I'm sorry?
We were talking at that particular point about the prior probability of God, which you said was 0.
That's what we would use, right? Because we don't have evidence for God. It's the same prior probability you would use for unicorns, right? If you wanted to make a half-baked story about unicorns, your prior probability would be 0.
Yeah, you start off not thinking it.
No, it's not. The prior probability of unicorns existing is not 0. It's higher than 0.
Okay,
the closest, but it's not zero.
So how many things can you dream up that have a non-zero probability?
Oh, lots of things.
Okay.
Square circles, Army bachelors.
Right, right. And so, by definition, so you're agreeing that whatever Bayesian analysis you're going to do is necessarily incomplete.
Why?
Because you're not considering all those things. It seems like you would need to make an infinite argument, factoring in unicorns and flying pixies and Marduk and.
For example, have you read the chapter in the Black Book of Science Math Theology by Tim and Lydia McGrew, which makes a Bayesian argument assigning a prior probability which is generously low and trying to calculate the stereo probability of the resurrection based upon reasonable estimates of the relevant Bayes factors in their analysis.
I would consider it something like mathematical masturbation. I haven't read it, but I can pretty much assume that it's a big pile of BS. Please, tell you what, why don't you write the show, tv@atheistexperience.com. I will personally respond to your email. I would love for you to give me this particular evidence, and I'll take a look at it, and I will try to find some flaws in it and show you that it's.
We've got Uber in Florida.
Hello.
Hello.
That's not your name.
Maybe he's a driver.
It's a nickname.
Cool. Well, we'll go ahead and give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you are in fact Uber until it's been demonstrated that it's impossible for you to be Uber.
Yeah, that'd probably be the wise thing to do. All right, so I guess I was having a little trouble wording it into a question, but I figured it out. So my question is, I'm sure you're familiar with the story, of Moses and the burning bush. Moses talking to God about what he should say to the Israelites, and God responding back to Moses, "I am that I am." Tell the Israelites, "I am sent you."
Yeah. In fact, I just made reference to that this past week. That's an interesting thing that you just brought that up. But go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting. Well, I just wanted to ask, what would you say if, I guess, somebody came up to you and said that God is I am?
Okay. There's a lot of, when I was religious, there was a whole lot of mysteriousness around this phrase. And then I read a book by Karen Armstrong called The History of God, where she looked at the history of all the Abrahamic religions and how they came together. And she explained it as a phrase which is like, let's say I'm telling you a story, and I'm saying like 3 men were on their way somewhere and blah, 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 and you say, well, where were they going? And I say, well, they went where they went. She says that this is common phrasing. And that when somebody says, tell them I am who I am sent you, it's like almost an irrelevancy. That it's not, the thing isn't about, the story's not about this, it's about something else. It's about freeing these people, or about going there and getting these people. That the important thing isn't who sent you, it's your mission. Now, whether or not that's correct, I don't know. But it was certainly an interesting way of looking at it that I hadn't heard or considered before, even though I was very familiar with the phrasing of they went where they went, or I don't know what they had for dinner, they ate what they ate, And
yeah.
I definitely am familiar with that kind of a phrase or a statement, and she's saying that it's like a common folkloric commentary in the Abrahamic religious tradition. I have no idea, I didn't...
But even if it's incorrect, that statement tells me nothing.
No, it really doesn't have a lot of info.
I was gonna interject afterwards, I guess, and say I'm not using the Bible as proof or anything. It was just the story kind of it was a story I learned when I was younger. Yeah. I thought about it for a while. I had a different interpretation of it, but that's the Bible,
Well, I can tell you what they taught me when I was in Sunday school, which was that the idea of I am was supposed to have represented the context of eternal existence.
Yeah, the one and only eternal blah, 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 blah.
They made a very big thing out of it. Whereas now I'm like, I wonder if it was a big thing or if
And
it
if-
was just a small thing.
And if
that-
Moses comes to me and says, I am sent me, or Yahweh sent me, or Jim Bob sent me, my response is going to be the same. Why do I care? You know, I don't, you know, it'd be interesting, I guess, to find out, but when you say, the Lord of the universe sent me, okay, I'm not even convinced there is a Lord of the universe. Why the hell did he need to send you? Why can't he come tell me what he wants to tell me himself?
Yeah. So I guess the reason I took it as a significant story, I guess, is because it was a point in the Bible where I guess God was defining himself in a sense.
But did it define anything any more than saying they went where they went defines where they went?
I think it's a deepity myself, but...
Well, my interpretation of it was God is, if that makes any sense to you.
No, it doesn't.
All right, so
God is a two-letter
I was
word.
thinking about it in a.
I mean,
words are symbols.
Yes, they are. And is would be, well, we don't want to get into the Bill Clinton speak of what depends on what is. But, you know, you can look at that and can seem, this is why I said it's a deepity, it can seem very profound. Oh, God is, like, the is, existence is, the eternal is. And it can seem very insignificant, but only if you're already buying into this. In truth, it has provided you absolutely nothing of substance about what God is. And it has provided you with nothing to confirm that, in fact, God is. Which is the question that I want answered. It's what would it take to convince me that God exists, or that a God is real, or that a God is, let alone is. And telling me God is doesn't do that.
Well, all right, so here's why I took it as significant. Because, all right, so the reason why I guess you didn't want to delve into is because it gets a little wordy and confusing, but
not because it's wordy and confusing. It's short words. Here's what I care about. You believe that God exists, right?
Correct.
Why?
Why?
Why do you believe? That's the only thing I care about. Well, I care about other things, but the only thing I care about in this
context of the show.
In this situation.
No, yeah. Why I believe personally because of experience, proof, I guess, that worked for me. I guess I wasn't always a Christian. I was raised Christian. I was atheist for a while, and then I guess I started just looking into a bit of everything, different philosophies, religions, and came across some answers, I guess, that it works for me. I mean, I don't expect, you know, my understanding or what I know to apply or work for everyone, and I could be wrong.
So you believe for a reason, but you don't think I should believe for that same reason?
No, I think you should believe for the exact same reason, and I would even...
Okay, then I would like to know, if it's in fact true and you have a good reason, I'd like to know what that reason is so that I could in fact believe. So what's the reason?
Well, all right, so like you, I was raised Christian, and I didn't necessarily like the Bible or churches. To go, I didn't understand anything. Nothing made sense. I asked a lot of questions. Nobody liked that. But being that I was raised around it, I always ended up, I guess, hearing extra information about God that I didn't necessarily care to know at the time. Like, you know, is a sin to make an image or an idol of God. That's one of the 10 Commandments. I've always wondered why that was. I never really understood it.
Why don't you wonder if it was, not why it was? If because I don't accept that there's. First of all, I don't accept this notion of sin. I certainly don't accept the notion that.
Holy shit. Yeah, I might be in here later on tonight if it cool off a little bit. If not, man, I'll see y'all in the morning. Peace. I might go downstairs and play some video games.